Can you guys hear me now? Can you hear me now? Testing one, two, three. Testing one, two, three. Can you hear me? Let me know if you can hear me. You can hear me. Okay, what happened there? That was wild. Why didn't you hear me? That's no sound. No, okay, a lot of you were saying no sound. I didn't know that. I didn't know I was being soundless. That's crazy. I'm glad I looked at the chat finally. I'm so sorry I wasn't looking. So, did you hear what I was talking about before? I was talking about
Can you
what
guys
hap-
hear me now? Can you hear me
Okay. There we go. All right. So yeah, sorry about that, everybody. I apologize. Okay, so yeah, so let's start over again then. My apologies for that. Yeah, so basically, as we were talking about before, there is there's a whole situation in Chicago, and how many of you saw? Give me now. I'm paranoid. Now I'm gonna keep checking audio over and over. How many of you saw that what happened in Chicago with the mother who got attacked with her son? Did anybody see that? Did you hear me mention that? And in Chicago, where I live, there was a scenario. Oh, United Nations. Okay, that's what I cut out. Yeah, like when I grew up, that was unthinkable in my family. I think it's unthinkable in most people's neighborhoods. You just don't do that to somebody's mama. But these kids, nobody ever taught them that. You learn protocol and etiquette from, your parents, from the adults that are responsible for raising you. And apparently nobody taught the kids, like, you don't be running up on somebody's mama. You don't get gangster with mama. That's just not appropriate behavior. And so ultimately, and it's funny because Dr. Claude Anderson actually speaks extensively about an abandonment of appropriate behavior in the black community. Us defending any and everything, all kinds of behavior, no matter what it is, and just sort of hiding under the guise of racism and saying, "Oh, well, the white man's doing this and he's doing that, and black people should be afraid of this white person and that white person." When really, I didn't tell me if I'm correct or incorrect, but I did not see a single white person in that entire video, right? I didn't see a single white person. And what's really interesting to me is that if that had been a pack of white kids that ran up on a black child and his mother, I'm going to speculate that the outrage would have been greater. Would you agree with me that if it had been a group of white kids, a group of little wannabe Klansmen, or a group of little MAGA kids that ran up on a black kid named Mama, the whole world would be outraged, right? So isn't that fascinating um that if it had been white on black crime, we would have had a very different reaction than we had to the fact that it was black on black crime. But what was to me very promising, and I don't want to sound like a pessimist here, but I thought about Dr. Claude Anderson when I saw the video. But what's very promising was the community did step up. The community stepped in, and the community said, "No, no, no, this is not appropriate behavior. We're not going to have this happen, and not on our watch." And they showed up at that school, and they're holding people accountable. And I just want to say shout out to the community members who stood up and spoke on behalf of that little baby, because and his mother, because I think that's just crazy stuff. And I think that there should be a deeper conversation, a deeper investigation in what happened to black people. Where did that how did that occur? Like what systematic factors are in place that lead children to literally have no home training at all? Like somebody taught you when you were little that you don't hit somebody's mama, that you don't do certain things. And I just kind of think it's disturbing that we will defend any and everything, and there's a saying that people use sometimes where they say offended by everything, ashamed of nothing. And I think sometimes that's true. Offended in anything that's like resembling anything that's related to racism, which racism is very real. I mean, there's no denying that. But again, there wasn't a white person in that video. So what I liked about it was we were protesting inappropriate behavior. We weren't just protesting inappropriate behavior from white people. We were protesting inappropriate behavior from all people. Just in terms of undermining our decency and our humanity toward each other, hitting on somebody's mama, not cool. But just for that one incident, I guarantee you, in the city of Chicago, there's 100 incidents like that happen every year. It's just that one got more attention because it was recorded and because it involved a mama. But believe you me when I tell you that Chicago's got stories. There's story after story after story in Chicago of all kinds of things that happen that will never appear in mainstream media, that you never hear about. I right after that, I think I saw another story, yeah, excuse me, where a black man was about to go to prison because a little 7-year-old girl got killed on a tricycle or something like that. Just little things like that, not on a tricycle, but on her bike. The 7-year-olds don't ride tricycles, but these stories happen all the time. And I don't see all the same level of outrage for those stories that I see when, something bad, when something happens between a black man and a cop. That just tells me, that tells me the difference between natural organic protests versus protests that are controlled by an outside entity. I'm not saying that the George Floyd situation wasn't problematic, but George Floyd was very different from a little girl. He was a grown man. He had a drug issue. Don't get me wrong, he didn't deserve what he get deserved, but that's not the most egregious case of black injustice that I've ever seen. There's so many other cases that are far worse. My best friend Greg Wilkins in Louisville, Kentucky, got shot in the head in front of his 3-year-old daughter. That's right there with the George Floyd in terms of trauma and everything else. Robin Simpson in Houston, who's a member of our B1 community, was stabbed last year 100 times in front of her 8-year-old daughter, Essence. Wasn't nobody really protesting that. Wasn't nobody really out here really standing up for black women like that. And so the idea that somehow crime is only bad when white people do it, I think we got to let that go. And I think that if you talk to people like George Frazier and Claude Anderson and others, and or Francis Cress Welsing and others, they were saying for a very long time that our people have changed and that our people are starting to behave in ways that just don't make any sense, right? And so you really are in a culture war. And I'm not talking about the Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative culture war. I'm talking about the culture war within the black community. All right. So anyway, let me get back to this. All right. So thank you for letting me talk about that. I think it fits into Black history. Now let's talk about now let's get back to talking about the stuff that happened in terms of racism. This is page 208 of the book Dirty Little Secrets by Dr. Claude Anderson. Dr. Anderson says here, this is about the Rosewood Massacre. He says something terrible happened in the little black Florida town of Rosewood in 1923. A mass murder of blacks took place. No one wanted to talk about it until 1995 when it was brought up for public discussion by a contingency of black Florida legislators. The massacre started with a lynching and ended with the entire town burned to the ground, its middle class black residents killed or chased into swamps. Rosewood was dead, but the memory of that town burned through the years in the hearts of those who had lived there. 70 years later, amid great anguish and political resistance, the state of Florida acknowledged the terrible wrong that had been done and voted to pay the survivors a small reparation award. Although the few black survivors of the Rosewood Massacre had avoided discussing the incident, Arnett Doctor, the son of a survivor, learned about what really happened in Rosewood when he began to interview senior citizens about the town's history. Nearly a century ago, Rosewood was a town of 200 black people. The massacre of blacks started when a white woman in a nearby town claimed to have been raped by a black man. Surprise, surprise, right? How often does that happen? Shannon Sharp, quit messing with them white girls. A mob of armed white men headed straight for Rosewood. They knew that because of gun control laws, most black communities were unarmed and defenseless. For a week, the white men ravaged and burned the black town of Rosewood. Newspaper reports from the time listed 8 dead, 6 blacks, and 2 whites. But 2 reports of mass graves filled with black bodies persisted through the years. Some sources charge that more than 100 blacks were slain. No one will ever know the true number of the dead, but the property records could not be clearer. Land, land, land that had been owned by black men and women was confiscated and sold for taxes to white buyers. The black families of Rosewood lost all they had all they had spent their lifetime earning. Not all whites actively participated, but most did nothing to stop the slaughter of blacks. A few did rescue some blacks who were hiding in the woods and swamps. The larger white community collectively chose to put the event behind them, even after the white woman claimed she was raped by a black man confessed to have lied. So she confessed. She came back and said, "Oh, I'm sorry. It was wrong. I made it up. It wasn't true. Didn't matter. No penalty for her." Right? Let's see. There had been no justice for the black people of Rosewood for more than 70 years, and pressure was applied to stop the Rosewood massacre from becoming a public issue. In 1994, with the nation's newspapers and television stations looking on, Florida's nearly all-white legislators took an historic giant step and voted to pay $2 million in compensation to the black Rosewood survivors. Although no amount of money could redeem the losses blacks suffered in the Rosewood incident, reparations from the state of Florida at least acknowledged and apologized for some of the suffering and lack of justice for blacks. Hmm, interesting. You remember that movie Rosewood? How many of y'all saw that movie Rosewood? Let me know if you saw that movie. Anybody remember that movie with Don Cheadle and Ving Rhames and all that was such a good movie. Is anybody else old enough to remember it? And it came out in the 90s and it was really good. And I'm so happy John Singleton made that movie because he did a great job of depicting, just what a black community is supposed to look like, and just the tragedies that we've endured that don't get acknowledged, right? So I think that while we can certainly be hard on ourselves in terms of some of these little tragedies like the ones that happened in Chicago. I think that it's also equally important that we speak out on what others have done to us and don't let those stories die because we got ancestors that were never heard. They were never acknowledged during the course of their lives, and I kind of feel um, that that's something that we're supposed to do, and this is one of the reasons why, if you look at states like Florida, where they're changing the curriculum, taking things out of history that make people uncomfortable, not telling our kids the truth. It's something. It's one thing you could complain about it if you want to, but I don't think complaining about it's really going to solve the problem. You could also do something about it, which means teach history to your own kids. So I personally think that everything that we know in terms of things that happen in our own history, these are things that we can easily teach ourselves and teach each other. I don't believe we should outsource the education of our children ever because it's very dangerous to do, right? There's no rule saying that you can't educate yourself and educate your kids. You got books too, you got the internet too, you got AI too, all right? So here's page 210 of the book Dirty Little Secrets at powernomics.com. Powernomics.com is Dr. Claude Anderson's website. Don't forget Christmas is coming. So if you want to get some books for your family or kids down the street, remember we got the village, right? Just like those little kids in fact, I hope that the village will mentor those little kids in Chicago who were involved in the fight and remember that they were children. Those children, if they don't get the love that they need and the guidance that they need and the discipline that they need, then they're going to hurt somebody else's child, right? So really, I would think that at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be, we're just angry at the kids and their mother. I think that I hope the men in that community will mentor those kids, and the mothers give them some love, because obviously whatever they need at home, they're not getting that, and their behavior is probably imitating something that they saw. They were probably treating him the way they get treated by somebody else. So I'm a big believer in scooping up other people's kids. So if you get Dr. Claude Anderson books for your children, get them for the kids down the street. I think that I love being the neighborhood dad. I think I wish I had 100 kids to be the neighborhood dad for. It's a blast for me. It's an opportunity. It's a blessing. It's a privilege. And it's an honor. It's an authority position that you should appreciate as much as you appreciated that promotion you got at UPS. That promotion you got at UPS just means that, some white guy decided that he was going to give you a little more status and a little more money. But when you have an authority position as a father or as a mother or as a leader in your neighborhood, or a leader of young children and young minds in the next generation, what's more honorable than that? And this is what lies as a contradiction. I see people that will take their job, their little white job, very seriously, or their little black job given to them by a white man. They'll take that very seriously. But when it comes to the job of being a mother, father, leader, mentor, whatever, they don't consider that to be serious. And I don't understand that. I really don't. Because that corporation doesn't care about you. They're not, you can't pass that job to your children. If you get sick or you can't work anymore, they will fire you. And they might fire you just because they decided that they just don't want you no more. So, and replace you with a robot. So, pick the things that really matter for you. All right. So majority should protect the minority. The Federalist Papers were the foundation documents for the U.S. Constitution. These writings were used to explain and promote the ratification of the U.S. Constitution. One of the most important principles the paper stressed was that in a social democracy that operated on the principle of majority rule, it is the majority population's responsibility to protect the rights of the minority population. The drafters of the Constitution understood that when the rights of the minority are constantly abridged, the nation is at risk of a revolt. So they said that if you don't take care of your minority and you don't step up and make sure everybody's good, then you are going to have a revolt, which is true. And this is what America is going to experience because America has allowed inequality to fester. America is a country that has never really felt that that it's important to make sure that everybody gets a piece of the pie. So the American dream, because it's so unequally distributed, is now in danger. It's in jeopardy because you don't treat your workers right. You don't treat your poor right. You let homeless people just sit out in the street and fester. And so as a result, eventually there's gonna be a tipping point. It's gonna happen at some point. It just may not happen soon. So here we go. So it says the drafters of the Constitution understood. Oh, here we go. I already said that. Thomas Jefferson was absent from the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, at which time the Federalist Papers were drafted. But he backed a legislative system based on majority will rule. While Jefferson talked grandly about a majority rule, he also stressed the right of the minority to revolt when their rights are ignored and abused. So he said that if you're in the minority and you're mistreated, you have the right to revolt. Jefferson, Madison, and other founding fathers believed that not only must the majority respect the rights of the minority, but they must, quote, never impede the minority from becoming the majority the same way the existing majority formed. Interesting. Should the majority abuse the minority or cause the minority to become a permanent minority, then the abused minority has no obligation to respect any laws or authority established by the ruling majority. Isn't that interesting? So Thomas Jefferson basically said that if you are a minority in the minority group, I don't like the word minority, but if you're in the minority group and you're not being respected, then you have no reason to respect any laws or rules that they impose on you. Isn't that's deep? I didn't know he said that. So it says here too, a permanent minority then is abused and suffering tyranny. Fresh from the British tyranny, Jefferson and the founding fathers were confident that a majority of free Americans would never trample on the liberties of fellow Americans as guaranteed in the Bill of Rights. They were blind to the fact that they had nearly a million black slaves. Notable quote: someone will at last arise who will champion our cause and compel the world to see that we deserve justice. A lonely black slave's prayer. Hmm. So apparently, this lonely black slave's prayer is that someone will rise that will champion our cause and compel the world to see that we deserve justice. um, is that like, I almost feel like waiting for Superman a little bit though. Like you're praying for it. I don't know if praying ever freed a country before. I don't know if praying ever helped you to defeat an enemy. I never had a bully to punch me in the face where I prayed him to go away. I'm not saying prayer doesn't matter, but prayer without works is dead. Prayer without works is just talking. So ultimately, if you're not engaged in some sort of activity to support the prayer, then you probably won't see many results. Can we agree on that? Give me an amen in the chat if you agree with me that prayer needs action behind it. Can we agree on that? Can we agree that maybe praying that people will be nicer to us isn't a solution? I hope you can hear me on that. I hope you agree with me. Give me an amen. Put an amen in the chat. I don't think praying and talking and looking pathetic and hoping that people will treat us better is really going to work. Because there's a whole industry of black people that do that. They made back in the DEI days, they made a lot of money going to different universities and doing like anti-racism training to white people. And I'm not saying that it's bad. I mean, maybe they could use it, but maybe they should do some anti-racism training for black people so that we won't submit to racism so easily. Right? Maybe we need our anti-racism training to say that you can do anything that you want to do. You have to move forward. You have to try. Right? There's no white man that's ever stopped me from taking care of my kids. I've never met a white man that stopped me from starting a business. I never met a white man that stopped me from reading a book. To this day, I've not met a white man who forced me to force fried chicken down my throat so that I could, die early from preventable diseases. I never met a white man that stopped me from going for a run in the morning so that I could stay physically fit. I never met a white man who stopped me from improving my mental health and emotional intelligence. I never met a white man that stopped me from talking to you, right? So it doesn't mean that there aren't forces out there, but I really would say that sometimes consciousness is really critical. That's why in the morning, I could have called my morning financial class anything. I could have called it morning finances or, getting your money right. I could have called it that, but no, I called it financial consciousness because I said a lot of times we lose because we're paying attention to the wrong stuff. You can't do everything. You can't pay attention to everything. Your energy and the thing you pay attention to is where your energy is going. So if I sit around and spend all my time talking about what white folks are doing or what Republicans are doing or what somebody else is doing, then I'm not really spending a lot of energy talking about what I could be doing, right? And so ultimately, it's probably more productive for me to spend time thinking about what I can do because that's all I can control. When everyone else does stuff, I can talk about it, but really at that point, I'm only glorifying what they're doing. I'm honoring them. I'm serving them attention. Attention is one of the most valuable commodities in existence right now. Attention is a massive commodity. That's how Facebook made so much money. They make billions of dollars every week because they get your attention. I don't really think that we should give everybody else our attention. I think that we deserve our attention. Our families deserve our attention. Our children deserve our attention. Our community deserves our attention. And that's the Black First philosophy, in case you're wondering. So when you come to the All Black National Convention, which I hope that you will, it's going to be in Brooklyn. I just spoke to a very nice lady named Angela Stewart who worked at NASDAQ and does artificial intelligence for them, and she's going to be one of our AI experts at the convention. We're going to have about 50 experts that are there for the sole purpose of solving problems for our people in our community, rebuilding our families, improving our mental and physical health, definitely improving our economics, making sure that you understand wealth and cash flow like no other, just leveling up in love, community, connection, constructive activity, positive thought processes toward each other. So ultimately, if you join us at the convention, that's what you're going to see. And Black First just means that I'm so busy loving myself that I ain't got time to hate you. I'm so busy paying attention to what I have going on that I don't have time to be a looking ass Negro and watching what you're doing. I'm not hating on what you're doing because I'm too busy loving on what I'm doing. So ultimately, that's the goal. That's what it means to be Black First. Be one could be me one. Black First could be me first, you first, us first, this first. And then after that's done, if you have extra time, then you can talk about what other people are doing. Okay. So anyway, moving on. So if you want to come to the convention, by the way, you can get your passes at allblacknationalconvention.com. The prices the early bird discount still in effect. It will end after Black Friday. So you can go to allblacknationalconvention.com if you want to lock in your pass. We'll be in Brooklyn the weekend of October 16th. All right, and also if you have a business and you want to market your business at the convention, you can email manager@boycewatkins.com. That's manager@boycewatkins.com, and just tell them about your business and that you'd like to market the business, and they can send you the press kit, and you can decide if you want to sponsor something, and we'll make sure you get promoted. All right, so moving on. Blacks were double victims of the Holocaust. This is on page 211 of Dirty Little Secrets by Dr. Claude Anderson, which you can find at powernomics.com. It says, even though they were never mentioned in public discussions, Black people were double victims of the Jewish Holocaust in the late 1930s and early 1940s. First, they were victims of the Nazi war crimes, just like the Jews were. Yet, Blacks as Holocaust victims remains one of the best kept secrets in history. They are conspicuously absent from the vast majority of Holocaust movies, museums, commemorations, and financial reparations policies. As quiet as it's kept, Black people lived in Germany before and during the Jewish Holocaust. As far back as World War I, many blacks had been recruited into the German army from its African colonies. Others had later migrated to Germany. Blacks in North Africa and the German colonies were also killed and forced into labor camps to produce war material and supplies. Nazi Germans hated and perceived blacks to be an inferior race of people. Blacks were arrested, persecuted, placed in German concentration camps, and executed prior to and during World War II. When the Jewish Holocaust began, black Germans were also targets. But unlike Jews, they fought hard against the mounting Nazism. For example, a black German named Laurie Giles was murdered by the Nazi SS police for the role that he played in leading a resistance group in his hometown of Dusseldorf. Hmm. Okay, so his name's Laurie Giles, Larigiles. How many of you knew that? How many of you know about the black people who lived in Germany during World War II? Anybody ever think about that or get any information about that in school or anything? Anybody know about that? All right. So it says more than 3 million black people were registered in the United States military during World War II. Blacks served and died as frontline combat soldiers, pilots, and support personnel, but justice and recognition continued to elude them. The Holocaust accounts have focused on religious, not racial persecutions. Blacks died with and for Jews. Yet, as victims and soldiers, they remain an afterthought. Blacks have received none of the more than 52 billion paid to Holocaust victims since the end of World War II. Hmm. Kind of like, it kind of reminds me of what they did with the Native Americans. How the you had the black people that were part of the Indian tribes, and they deliberately excluded the black people from the reparations payments, right? So this is interesting, right? Okay, so this is page 213, chapter 18, and it says odds and ends. You can fool some of the people all the time. Many facts. In 1866, Memphis, Tennessee riot, whites burned down every black church in the city. Did you know that? In 1995-96, more than 70 black churches were burned throughout the Southeast. Why they burning churches, man? It's just evil. In the late 1800s, Henry Ossian, a West Point graduate and one of the leaders of the Buffalo Soldiers, was set up by jealous white officers and court-martialed for embezzlement. In 1990, TLC Beatrice, y'all know where he's going with this, Beatrice was the largest black-owned company in the United States with total revenue of $8.8 billion. Shout out to Reginald Lewis. I met the family representative of the Lewis family at the George Fraser conference. I'm going to talk to him again soon. I'll probably bring him in or something. He's a good guy. Media routinely degraded blacks. Throughout the Reconstruction period, major social and economic forces used the print media to maintain the status quo on black people using negative stories, cartoons, and product advertisements. From the social section of the news, papers and magazines used labels, names, and language that were outright racist. These terms included, okay, I'm just gonna say it, nigger, darky coon, pickaninny, mammy buck, uncle aunt, high yaller, yaller hussy, and light complexion yaller man. Yaller. They affixed names to blacks that poke fun at them, such as Colonel, Senator, Sheriff Apollo, George Washington, and Napoleon Bonaparte. Many of these images were further exaggerated and promoted commercially on postcards, calendars, outdoor billboards, and consumer products like pancake flour, rice, soap, tobacco, and dolls. Lacking competitive print media, political power, and their own independent economic structure, our own independent economic structure. He says we didn't have our own independent economic structure. Our own independent economic structure. I keep saying that because we need institutions. We don't need more jobs. Black Americans were totally vulnerable and incapable of countering the negative media images. The pattern continues today. Integration killed off black-owned community-based newspapers. Blacks acquired their first radio station in the late 1940s. It took 50 years for them to own less than 2%, or just 176 of 10,000 radio stations in the market. The 1996 Telecommunications Act, passed by Congress and signed into law by President Clinton, stripped blacks of their meager gains. The act, now this is your allies, by the way. The act lifted radio ownership caps, created a frenzy of consolidation and mergers, and blacks lost more than 30% of their stations in just 1 year. At the current rate that black stations are being bought and forced out of business, blacks will again be inconsequential in the media business. With capital so firmly fixed in the white community, it's no wonder that whites own more than 97% of all the country's radio stations. It seems as if you were not there when the goodies were passed out, so you will always be relegated to the crumbs, which is true. I think the internet changes that a little bit, though. There's a lot of space out there for black-owned media on the internet. Just even the people that have these massive social media platforms, things like that, and legacy media, stuff out of Hollywood and stuff like that, is actually getting weaker. Like there are a lot of YouTube channels and Instagram pages that get more traffic than CNN. So I think that opens the door for more black ownership in media. So that's a good thing. I've got my little space. You've got people like the Roland Martins and others out here that are doing their thing. And I think that and even Kai Cenat, people like that, the young influencers, they're not so terrible. I maybe at some point they'll evolve and start using the platform for more productive purposes. But as of right now, it's their company and they're doing their thing, and I think that that's a wonderful thing, right? Ownership of media is really important. In most countries, when you invade or most situations when you invade a country, first thing that the enemy tries to do is blow up your radio stations to take away your ability to communicate with each other. The ability to communicate across a group is very, very dangerous. That's why in certain countries, when there's a rebellion, they'll shut off the internet. You know, you go to Malaysia or something, they're quick to shut off Twitter and the internet and all that because that brings people together. They can share a common message. The Million Man March was kind of like that rising moment that was built by local radio stations that were all committed to everybody coming to DC for this march. And all it was a march. It wasn't like they showed up to fight a war or anything. They were just showing up to march. But even that kind of unity is seen as very, very dangerous. But the ownership of black media is really important. And black access to capital, building things, institutions in the community is very important. As I was speaking to Angela Stewart today, the lady I told you about from NASDAQ, one of the things that we talked about was raising capital and how companies go public on NASDAQ and they get, instantly millions of dollars in funding to do a lot of things. And I said, yeah, I said, we did a lot of stuff on our own. We didn't get any help. I said, it'd be kind of cool if we saw what we could do with $100 million or a couple $100 million. I really think that we could do a lot of things. In fact, I know that we could. So, I mean, we did all this with nothing. So imagine what we could do with, like a significant capital. So at the end of the day, I think access to capital matters, but also the skill set matters so that you know what to do with the capital when you get it. Let's not pretend like black people don't have any access to anything. Every year when there's an NBA draft, there's dozens of new black millionaires being created. A lot of these professional athletes have contracts in the hundreds of millions of dollars, but because no one ever taught them to think like an institution, nobody taught them to think like a corporation, nobody taught them to think like a person that controls a capital base. They end up taking that money and doing stupid things with it. Like this guy, Sebastian Telfair, who's now doing a world tour explaining how he blew through $20 million. And a lot of athletes do this because it's what I wrote about that in my book. It's called economic immaturity. And economic immaturity is where you get your money and you spend it like a child because nobody ever taught you how to think like a grown man. Nobody ever taught you how to think like an adult, like an economic grown up. Economic grown ups make grown up moves. If you're watching the financial media now, and I hope you're watching this, you'll see right now Elon Musk and Jensen Wong and all of the billionaire.com guys are all over in the Middle East right now, raising hundreds of billions of dollars in capital so they can be the ones to control the next generation of artificial intelligence. They're building massive data centers for hundreds of billions of dollars. They're planning to build millions of robots. They're planning to control entire industries. They're sitting together playing nice. Some of them don't like each other, but they're making deals and negotiating because they want to be positioned to control things. So the question then becomes, are we raising children who can think that way, who can say, hey, I don't know if I like this guy, but I'm going to sit down with him and we're going to make a plan. Right? I mean, what do you think? Am I being too pushy? Am I being bougie? Am I being uppity? Or are we on track here? Do you agree with that? Do you agree that perhaps when we raise children, we have to raise our children as institution builders, as empire builders, not as job seekers? Right? So because if you're in the NBA or NFL and somebody's giving you $50 million a year and you're thinking like an employee, then you're going to spend your money like an employee. You're thinking like a consumer. No, you should be thinking like somebody who's running a corporation that's making 50 million a year. You should realize that most businesses never make 50 million a year. So you literally are a walking corporation. If you're blowing your money like a sucker, then you're not just destroying your wealth. You're destroying your life is your right, but you're destroying a lot of people's lives because there are a lot of people that could be really, really whose lives could actually improve quite a lot if you had a little bit of vision and made some investments in a way that was mature and disciplined and intelligent. Jensen Huang, when he created NVIDIA, created probably a million jobs for people, at least a million. And that's just for people that work for NVIDIA. Not to mention the fact that literally when he announced his earnings today, and a lot of you follow this, I'm sure. Anybody own NVIDIA stock? How many of you own NVIDIA or something close to it? How many of you saw your stocks? Hey, did anybody see what happened to your stocks after NVIDIA announced their earnings today? Did anybody check your portfolio today? How many of y'all made some bread today? Anybody? I hope you'll say, oh, I hope that a lot of you say yes. I hope that you do. And if you don't say yes and you don't know what's going on, you better ask somebody. If you better ask somebody, you're gonna learn today because there's money. This man, by making the earnings announcement for Nvidia and exceeding the earnings expectations, probably created $2 trillion in wealth for his people that day. And you know what? I'm his people too, because my family owns about $150,000 worth of Nvidia stock. So when he announced his number, I said, "Hey, babe, guess what?" Right? And because our family wealth went up because we hitched our wagon to his. So what I'm saying to you is that, there are people out here that are moving the world, and I think that we should raise kids to think that way. And it's a mindset. It's being trained to even believe that you have the ability to shape your world. When you are trained to be a victim from birth, when all they do is train you that being black just means you can't do nothing, you just a low man on the totem pole all the time. You always a day late and a dollar short. They always gonna be you always they tricked it did you. They tricked it did you. They always gonna trick you because they smarter than you. And that's not a confidence booster that you get with a leader. If you look at the history of Jensen starting NVIDIA, I'm not saying he didn't have some help. He had a lot of help. But this man sat down with a group of his friends and, 30 years ago and said, let's start a computer company. And I mean, they didn't know what the hell they were doing. He was like, I didn't take any business classes and stuff. I didn't know exactly what to do, but I figured it out. Because they could have all sat together and said, gosh, how are we going to find us a job? Where's the jobs at? Right? So what I'm saying is that you need somebody in the community that's going to take the lead, and we have to breed leaders, breed systematic thinkers, people that are thinking about institutions and not just a good job. That's just not that's not how wealth gets built. Workers in America get treated terribly. They will never give power to workers. They just won't. Familiarity shows contempt. Page 214, Dirty Little Secrets. Dr. Claude Anderson. That's the name of the book. The familiar name slave owners gave black men and women signaled status and reflected the power relationships. Black men with the inner domestic circle of a white family were often called boys until they became senior citizens. Then they were called pappy or uncle. Black females were called girls until they were up in age, and then they were called auntie. We still call them auntie to this day. If the black female was young and attractive, she was called a Jezebel to indicate that she was sexually loose and disruptive to white men and women's relationships. Mammy was a popular familiar name for a black woman that emerged in the mid 1800s. It was the name for older women who took care of and raised white children. As subtle as it might be, the term mammy stripped a black woman of her dignity, her normal sexuality, her own family responsibilities, and made her a nurturing, caring female authority dedicated to white society. Mammies usually had a degree of authority in the white household. They ranked next in line to the white wife or mistress. A black auntie ranked lower than a mammy based upon who she worked for and the skin color of the children that she was raising. Mammies raised white children, aunties raised black children. Who knew this? Isn't that interesting, right? Auntie, like her male counterparts, uncle and pappy, carry practically no authority in white households. So the auntie, the uncle, and the pappy had no authority. The mammy had all the authority. And that probably translates to a lot of black families now where Big Mama ends up running everything, right? And that becomes a source of conflict, where the men start to feel disrespected because there's not a lot of respect for male intervention in some families. Not all families, but in some. Let's see here. Okay, so auntie, like her male counterparts, uncle and pappy, carry practically no authority in white households. While a black person's first name could be added to the titles of pappy, uncle, auntie, or mammy, it was strictly taboo to give a black person a formal, non-familiar name, like you were not allowed to call them Mr., Mrs., or Miss. So black people you were not called Mr., Mrs., or Miss. How many of y'all knew that? Give me a yes or no if you learned that in school somewhere. Did anybody learn that anywhere? How many of you, did anybody go learn this in your public school? I mean, I'm really curious. How many of y'all knew the difference between a mammy, an auntie, an uncle, and a pappy? And who had the authority in the house? I didn't know this. And the mammy raised the white children, the auntie raised the black. That's wild, right? This is crazy. So they had whole systems in place to control you. I think that's the point to understand is that, and this is why systematic thinking is so important because when you're talking about dealing with something like racism, you're dealing with a system. And the only way you can really defeat the system is with a system. Okay. You have to be systematic in your approach. And so in our Black Business School for Children, we have the acronym STURDY, where we want to raise sturdy children. STURDY stands for Systems, Technology, Entrepreneurship, Relationships, Delegation for the Youth. And so systems are important because the best way to make money is through systems. AI systems, the stock market a system, right? Corporate America a system. So really, it's not sort of being accepted by a system that matters. It's the creation of a system. The technology is everything right now. It's always been important, but it's more important than ever right now. So we want our kids trained on that. Entrepreneurship. Every black child should know how to start a business by the age of 12, just in case they can't get a job. Every black child should know how to start a business. Stop telling me that everybody can't be an entrepreneur. I know that. Everybody knows that. But everybody should be skilled to do that just in case the white man ain't hiring, just in case massa ain't giving out jobs. You can't sit here and starve to death and starve your children, starve your woman, starve your family uh, because somebody else chose not to feed your kids. That's not appropriate behavior. Relationships, it means that you have to understand the importance of relationships and economics. If I get along with my brother, get along with my sister, and I'm just a person who's relational in nature, I have good emotional intelligence, I am healed, I've gone through the therapy, I know how to resolve disputes with you, then I'm more likely to form a connection with you. And that connection is protection. Protection is in the connection. So when you have a family of people dealing with an issue, that's very different from an individual dealing with an issue. So the fact that they've trained us to create communities full of individuals fighting their battles on their own, well, no wonder you're struggling. You know, you sitting there, you got one income, and you're doing everything by yourself and you're falling behind on everything. The reason you're falling behind is because you're doing a job for two or three people. I had a hard conversation like that with a young lady I mentored, and she had these kids, and the daddies were off making other babies with other women or something. I don't know what the hell they were doing. Wasn't sending no money or nothing. And she's doing the strong black woman thing, like I got it, and I got me and my kids, and I'm like, yeah, but I said, and then sometimes she would break down and tell me how hard it is. I said, yeah, of course it's hard because you're doing a job for two or three people. That's why it's hard. You're not supposed to do a two-person, three-person job with one person. That's hard, right? With me and my wife, we raise our kids together. It's hard when we're working as a team. If we're doing it by ourselves, it would be even harder. So the question is, who are your teammates, and do you care enough to even find the right teammates, know how to get along with the teammates, resolve disputes with the teammates, put your ego to the side with your teammates? You can't have everything you want. You can't snap and go crazy every time something doesn't go your way or somebody says something that somebody did. Oh, he dissed me, man. That's why it was disrespect. I don't tolerate no. I'll cut you off if you disrespect. I get it, but sometimes you gotta let stuff go. So I get it. I mean, this is just real talk right now in terms of business. Watch how people. I keep pointing back to Jensen Wong, not because I'm putting him on a pedestal, but I really like this guy, the guy that runs Nvidia, one of the richest human beings on the earth right now. The reason I like Jensen is because I have been fascinated watching this man navigate this very toxic political landscape. He doesn't just navigate, first of all, dealing with Trump on a regular basis. My God, can you imagine that? But he'll navigate between Trump over here, Elon Musk over there, and his crazy stuff, and then deal with all these different business owners. And then he'll get on a plane and fly to China and somehow find some way to get along with the Chinese leadership and Trump at the same time. And they hate each other. And then he'll have Sam Altman over here and Microsoft over there. I mean, it's amazing. I'm like, man, this guy. Wow. And what you'll notice is that Jensen Wong, even though he is probably one of the most powerful human beings on the planet, you don't see him walking around with a big S on his chest. Look, I'm the man. Look at me. I'm King Kong consciousness. That's what Umar used to say. I'm King Kong consciousness. Right? You don't see all that. You see a guy who probably, I can only imagine how many weird, horrible, disrespectful things he's heard that he just let it slide for the sake of the relationship. So I would encourage anybody who wants to win. How many of you want to win? Let's be conscious. Give me a yes in the chat if your goal is to win, if your goal is to level up and grow. Give me a yes. I'm gonna go Uncle Boyce for a minute. Somebody asked how old am I? I'm 54 years old. I was born in 1971. I'm old. I don't know if I'm an uncle, a pappy, or whatever. I'm gonna be Mr. Boyce right now. So the white man can't call me Mr., but y'all can. So or maybe Dr. Boyce. How about that? So what I'm gonna say to you is if you want to level up, I encourage you to walk away from the toxic culture of individuality that has infected America like a freaking STD. It's infected our thinking like a virus. Individuality, me first, what I want, and me, I'm putting me first, myself first all the time. That's so bad for relationships. It's so bad for economics. It's so bad for family. It's so bad for everything. It doesn't mean you can't ever take care of yourself. It doesn't mean you can't have times where you put you first. For sure, you have to do that at some point. But I see some people who do that all the time in every situation unconditionally, and then they're shocked when they have no one around them anymore. Right? Sometimes you have to humble yourself for the sake of of the partnership that you've created, whatever that is, whether it's family or your friend or your business or a partnership in, or maybe your business is partnering with somebody else's business and somebody says something that really angers you and you got to go woo-saw it off, and or you have to think through what your response is going to be, because every time I see stories about some guy that goes to a nightclub and somebody disrespected him by stepping on his shoe, and next thing you know they're fighting. It's trauma. It's a trauma trigger. It's a trauma trigger trauma response. Whatever you want to call it, right? You're easily triggered because you didn't heal from your trauma. So when something hurt your feelings, you just snapped and went ballistic, and next thing you know, the police are getting called or whatever. And the reality is that this culture was infused in the music. So now you have black people get losing wealth by getting trauma or getting triggered, going to the club. You a rapper, you got 5 million in the bank. Somebody step on your toe, say something about your girl, disrespect you. You and they're fighting. Next thing you know, you're in a big lawsuit and you're bankrupt. You lose everything because you could not keep your cool. You're not intelligent, emotionally intelligent enough to protect your wealth by not behaving like a child. Happens all the time. If I really wanted to get money from a rapper, it'd be easy. I just would talk crazy about him and maybe spit in his face or something and make him punch me or call his mama a name, whatever it took to trigger him, and then let him punch me in the face, and then I'd sue him. Right now, real life example. Nicki Minaj right now is in jeopardy of losing her house. How many of y'all knew that? How many of y'all know Nicki Minaj right now is literally the court is, I think they either have or they're about to put a lien on her house. Now I can't give you the details of the story. You can go Google it. But basically, here's what happened. So she goes over to Europe or something. Something happens where a fan runs up on stage. There's a dispute regarding whose fault it was. Like the security, that y'all didn't protect Nikki, whatever. She has this boyfriend, husband, whatever he was, who is gets into an argument with some guy who was supposed to be the head of security, and he runs up on this German guy or whatever and punches him in the face or whatever. The court allegedly, this is all the whole story, right? So he hops on a plane and takes off, and Nikki finishes her European tour, but he's nowhere to be found. And this guy, though, he didn't fight back. I don't think he punched him back. He called the cops. And so when he called the cops, he then went and filed a lawsuit for millions of dollars. And when they filed the lawsuit and nobody showed up in court, they got a default judgment that was massive. I want to say at least hundreds of thousands of dollars. It might have been over 1 million, and they've been hunting them down to get them to or to serve them papers on this judgment. And then court, and so they're hiding from the people serving the papers and not answering the phone. I mean, just doing stuff that you shouldn't have to do, right? But they're doing this now because once they get served, somebody's gonna go in that bank account and just pull the money out. And why did this happen? Well, because somebody could not keep their cool and decided that because I'm mad at you and you disrespecting me, I'm gonna take it to the streets to prove what kind of man I am. There's so much that stupid pressure amongst black men, it's ridiculous. And I'm like, why in the world do you got to go punch somebody to make your point? But look at how many people cheer that behavior on. Like, yeah, that's right. You got to don't tolerate that disrespect. Well, that disrespect or the inability to kind of let some things go can be very, very expensive. And this happens a lot in hip hop culture. Rappers are easy targets for money. Like because they do so much stupid stuff that is easily suable. Whether it's stuff with women or I think he what was it even, and it's not just the rapper. What's that? Not Keanu Reeves. The one that was in Boys in the Hood. You know what I'm talking about? The he's not that great of an actor, to be honest with you. You know what I'm talking about? The brother that was in Boys in the Hood. He wasn't the one that he wasn't Ricky that got shot in the back. He was Ricky's brother. Just so I remember Ricky, Morris Chestnut. I kind of know Morris. I know Ice Cube. I don't remember Cuba Gooding Jr. Nia Long thought she was great. Cuba is okay. But anyway, Cuba, he gets drunk and he touches a lady's breast or something. And next thing you know, he's dealing with massive, massive, massive lawsuits. So protecting your wealth from your own behavior is really important, and the ability to not put yourself in situations where you either are under the influence of a mind-altering substance, or you are easily triggered and you do things that are going to cause you to get sued. Then you might as well not even get the money if all you're gonna do is give it away, because you, Shannon Sharp, could not walk away from some 19-year-old who's selling her body parts for $1.99. All right, so anyway, let me move on. All right, so familiarity shows contempt. Okay, so we already talked about that. This is page 215 of the book, Dirty Little Secrets by Dr. Claude Anderson. He says, they never get the word. It says, blacks have seldom taken steps to preserve, mark, or close their communities and culture as European, Asian, and Hispanic ethnics do. Some groups mark and close their communities with posted signs, like Little Italy or Frenchtown. Others use fences or another kind of barrier. Sometimes it's more subtle, with archways, language, or distinctive street signs. Whatever the technique of marking and closing, ethnic groups establish and maintain the sanctity, unity, and control of property value by marking and closing off their community. So they make it clear that you're in Chinatown. They make it clear that you are in Little Italy. Like you don't stumble into that. You might see a sign or you'll see some indicator. And then what's interesting as well is they see our community as very porous. They say, "Oh yeah, of course we can go open a business in the black community." They'll thank us for taking their money because they're happy to have a Chinese restaurant on the corner they can go to. But then if you try to take your black ass across to their neighborhood and set up a business there, you're going to get some resistance, right? So there's a protectionism there that's not always there with us. So it says here, Hispanics in Florida are an example of marking and controlling territory. When Hispanics took control of the Dade County Commission and Miami City Council, they declared Spanish to be an official language equal to English. This action significantly reduced the necessity of Hispanics to learn English. Instead, non-Hispanics are obligated or not obligated or obliged to learn Spanish to do business within Hispanic communities. Spanish language radio and television programs dominate the commercial airways in those cities. All public signs and instructions must be in both English and Spanish. Many street signs are now in Spanish. Business owners and government offices want employees who are bilingual and fluent in the Spanish language. Non Spanish speaking whites and blacks are effectively shut out of the social, political, and economic systems. Are the non Spanish speaking residents victims of language discrimination? Are they being denied the right to earn a living? Marking and closing communities appears to be a new concept only to blacks. Ethnics have used their culture and language to mark and close their community streets for nearly a century. In 1933 in Chicago, Italian immigrants pressured the city government to change the 7th Street in their community to Balboa Avenue. The name change reflected an Italian presence and gave honor to the great Italian navigator. A few years earlier, the black community had the same opportunity to make a statement about their group, but failed to see the importance of the control of symbols within their community. Symbols are really important, by the way. Symbols matter with when it now what's Boyce Watkins? What voicewatkins.com? Wait, Joanne, I think my name's spelled my name. I think my name is spelled Boyce, Boyce, not voice like the voice in your throat. Like, yeah, I last time I checked, it was spelled B O. Oh, you know that? Okay, I don't know who Boyce Watkins is. I'm sorry, I don't know much about that, but I'll let you handle that. Sorry, I just saw voicewatkins.com. I was like, what is that? All right, so here, one thing you should know about symbols. This is important. Symbols. My wife, as you know, she's really deep on the subconscious mind. She studies it pretty extensively. And one thing that she mentioned to me that I never forgot was that symbolism is one of the most impactful things that your subconscious absorbs. So ultimately, when you're talking about things that influence people, things that move people, things that get people to do things, symbols really matter. In fact, you see symbolism all the time in hip hop music videos. I could make a song where I say exactly the same thing as Kodak Black or some other rapper. I don't know, NLE Chopper. I'm trying to remember the rap. You may not even know these names, but these are some of the big rappers out there, right? I could literally say the exact same thing that NLE Chopper says in a video, but it's not going to be taken the same way because I'm a 54-year-old man. But then also he's got symbols all throughout the video that let you know what culture he represents and who he represents, right? So symbolism is everything. So ultimately, you may want to think about what symbols matter for you and what symbols you may use in order to achieve things. Like, so for example, the panther behind my head is a symbol. It's a symbol of the Black Business School. It's Felicia. She's red, black, and green. I like the panther. The panther's a ferocious animal. He ain't scared of nothing. He will bite you in your ass if you mess with him, and that represents the energy and the spirit behind which we created the Black Business School and everything that we do. We are not playing. Our goal is to get out here and win. We're not trying to be second place. We're not trying to integrate and make friends. We're trying to succeed, right? So the panther was like, yeah, panther's a good choice. So symbolism matters. You got to pay attention to that. A lot of communities use that. Rituals matter as well. That's why you go through rituals. Like Morehouse has a great ritual where it's like how you become a Morehouse man. I love that ritual. I think it's great. I'm like, wow. And when they get done, they really feel like they're a part of it. If you're in a fraternity or sorority, they have lots of rituals. You know, you could debate whether or not they're healthy or not. Some of them are a little bit weird, but some of them are cool. Like, and a lot of them, they definitely build a bond. So rituals and symbols are really important. And so stuff like that makes me think that maybe that Illuminati stuff might actually be real because their symbolism is something that's often used to create unity around an idea or to help, secure a message. Even if I went to Ohio State, the symbol is that I have the Buckeye on my jersey or my shirt or whatever, right? So one thing I want to mention too is here's that list of different Wall Street banks you may want to look into investing in if you haven't received it yet. I call it Wall Street Heavyweight. So I'm gonna put that list in the chat. So that's just some stocks that you may want to take a look at that I think are going to do well in the next 3 to 5 years. So that's just a gift. So feel free to go take a look at that. It's in the chat, so you should see it right there. All right, so moving on. All right, so he says here, let's see, in an attempt to promote Black culture and heroes in Chicago, a few Blacks moved to have Washington Park Court named DuSable Court in honor of the Black man who settled and founded the city. Almost immediately, the larger Black community objected and demanded the reinstatement of the name to Washington Park Court after the first president of the United States. Okay, interesting. The glass ceiling in organized crime. Organized crime, like politics and business, was a microcosm of American society and provided a path to mainstream society for most groups. Crime was organized with and through legitimate businesses beginning in the early 1930s. Black crime was disorganized and outside of mainstream society. It lacked a business structure and was therefore relegated to blue collar or the lowest level of crimes against the person and property. In the 1930s, however, a few blacks started their own form of gambling called playing the numbers. This form of illegal gambling was accepted in black communities as an alternative economic system. Black gangs did reasonably well until Italian mobsters found out how well they were doing. Then the Italian mobsters moved the blacks out. Now, playing the numbers has gone legit or mainstream. Today, it's called the lottery, and blacks spend heavily to purchase lottery tickets. Now, instead of the mob operating an alternative income system in black communities, it is state governments that siphon those dollars from black citizens into state coffers. Although blacks are heavy lottery players, they do not control the game's employment or the revenue flow. Blacks' lack of political and economic cohesiveness and muscle has always left them vulnerable to takeovers by others. Ethnic control of criminal activities produced more than mere economic impact. It gave them greater control over their culture, employment opportunities, political clout, as well as social mobility and acceptance. There was an aura of acceptance for the Irish, Jews, and Italians when they participated in organized crime. The gang communities created economic and political opportunities. The communities accepted them as and their gifts. This leads to something that is really important for you to understand. If you go into business, I'll explain it like this. I was watching this poor girl on TikTok. She looked like she was in her 20s and she was very sad. And the reason she was sad is because her business, she started a business making pimple patches. She made these pimple patches and they were nice. She had different colors of pimple patches, and apparently people were buying these pimple patches. And the reason she was sad is because for whatever reason, she was being sued by a business that was, giving her the business and forcing her out of business. And she was very sad because she didn't know what to do. She didn't have money for lawyers, and they were just, putting that pressure on. A lot of times, somebody just suing you can put you out of business, even if you did nothing wrong. So I thought about this as I thought about today's class. And one of the things I have to tell you, and I hate to say it like this, but I need you to understand this, and I need you to really write this down and just make sure that you get this in your through your head, please. Business is warfare. Business is warfare. And if you ever have anything that is worth having, if you create something that is valuable, there is a very good chance somebody's going to come along and see what you got, and they're going to come and try to take it. And that's not just true in business. If you got a real good man, you better treat him right because somebody else is trying to get that man too. If you got, if you have some money in the bank, somebody's definitely going to try to trick you out of that money. And one of the aspects of wealth protection that doesn't get discussed enough is is how do you fight to make sure you defend what you have? There is no country in the history of this planet that has ever had freedom and wealth and not had to defend that freedom and that wealth. So when you talk about Black Wall Street and you speak of it as a victim and you talk about it as if you are scared to death that they're going to come and take it from you, and every time we build something, they're going to come beat us up and take it, then that's a very defeatist attitude that probably means that you shouldn't be a wealth builder. You should probably just go get along with white people and hope that they don't decide to beat you in your ass because that's all you got. At that point, that's all you got. Because what you're doing is you're surrendering to this idea that if they decide to take something from you, you're just going to have to give it up and then go start over somewhere else. Or you could take another approach where you are thinking very defensively about everything that you build. You're thinking in terms of having the plan A, the plan B, the plan C, the plan D, the plan E, all the contingencies in place. This is just generally true in business. Things like diversification that people don't talk about. They don't think about this. They don't ask themselves, well, what if this one thing gets taken away? I'm living off one damn paycheck, and that's literally the difference between me eating and not eating next week. And I haven't sat down for 1 minute. I'm partying Saturday night, not even considering what kind of hell will rain upon my life if that white man that I work for decides to cut my paycheck. If he just decides that, hey, we need to cut the budget, you got to go, buddy. And all my only plan is to sit and cry. That's my only plan. That can be your only plan. I mean, really, and it's really a hard conversation to have because I don't want to be mean. I don't want to sound mean, but I have to. I have to sound honest. I really grow annoyed with people that will say, "Well, why should we build a Black Wall Street? Because every time we build it, they all they do is they burn it down." So what you're saying is that Black people are inferior to white people. You're saying that you're too immature and too weak to defend and protect what you have and fight for it. You got to understand, and it's not just things like a Black Wall Street. I mean, hopefully it never gets to the point where you need military intervention and have to pull out a gun, but you might have to pull out a lawyer. You might have to pay that money and defend yourself in court in a lawsuit. And instead of sitting around feeling sorry for yourself and saying, "Oh, it's the racism. They did it again. They tweaked it at me." Maybe the reality is that in a capitalist society, you never learned that business is war. That there are capitalist sharks in the tank and vultures out here that will see what you got. They'll start salivating, licking their chops, and they're gonna test you. Can you hold on to what you got? Do you even deserve to have what you have in your possession? Because if you can't defend it, then you should never have it. If you can't defend and be the best man for the woman that's next to you, then she needs a better man anyway. If you can't support and defend the business that you built, then that shouldn't be your business. It should be in the hands of somebody like me who knows how to defend what he has, who knows how to fight. I'm telling you, I really believe, and I'm not being critical of everybody, and I don't want to sound generalist here, because I end up sounding mean and pessimistic here. So please forgive me if that's how it sounds. But our people need to learn how to fight. Not only should you learn how to fight, you should expect a fight. I'm just telling you, if you get something people want, somebody's gonna come try to take it. And if your only plan in response to somebody coming taking your stuff is to be a victim and cry about it, then you probably shouldn't go accumulate anything in the first place. Why waste your time building wealth just so somebody else can have it? The protection of wealth is actually harder than the accumulation of wealth. The accumulation of wealth is hard as hell. But protecting the wealth is the part where most people fail. That's the really hard part because protecting wealth requires foresight and planning and discipline and tenacity and diversification and scheduling and just all these things and consciousness and sort of thinking things through. And some people don't have that. They just don't. They're not even planning for the next. They don't even have a plan, a death plan for their children. They didn't even buy insurance. Right? So this is why 70% of all wealthy families lose all their wealth in one generation. 90% of all wealthy families lose all their wealth in two generations. So it's not just Black people, it's everybody. But if you ever go look at a family that has a lot of money, go check out a family that's got 100 million, 200 million in assets and watch how they operate. Just watch how they operate. You say, well, do you have a lawyer? Oh yeah, I got three lawyers on deck. Which one do we need to call? Um, do you have an estate plan? Well, of course we do. Because if I die right now, she would get this and he would get that. And da, da, da. The way they raise their children. Like, in fact, there's studies out there that show that most really wealthy families, the ultra rich, they hire private investigators to investigate anybody that comes into their circle, anybody that comes into their life. If their child brings home a boyfriend or girlfriend, they will have a private investigator look and do a background check on that person to see who they're dealing with. They're very, very conscious, very protective of their wealth. And so if you think about this, I would almost say that in general, the way we're sort of taught about what's happened to us, and we get too caught up in only being the victim and never actually being the student of what happened, then that's where you get stuck. You get stuck in victimhood. You get stuck with this defeatist idea that, well, if I ever get anything, all they're going to do is they're going to come take it and I'm going to give up easily. You deserve to have wealth. You don't. I want you to go, if you'll study most entrepreneurs that were able to go from nothing to $100 million or whatever, do you understand how many times they had to like just decide not to give up? How many times they got derailed and knocked down and beat up and lost everything and had to rebuild? Like you got to have some courage. You got to go get some guts on you. Like if you don't have that, if you're not prepared to really just fight consistently for what it is that you want and what it is that you have, then you will never have anything. And if you get it, you're not going to have it for very long. So it does require various elements of discipline. Um, Tenacity. We talked earlier about stupid things like just that whole immature hip hop culture where they got these 40-year-old black men running around sagging like they teenagers and doing stupid stuff, getting drunk and high all the time. Or you really think a drunk, high loser like you who sleeps with everything with a big booty with a 100-mile radius, you really think that you're going to be able to protect anybody's wealth? You are not a good steward of the ship, sir. You are not a leader. You are not a captain. You are not a person that is going to be able to fight and defend anything. It's easy to steal money from a drunk. It's easy to take from a drug addict. It's very easy to rob somebody who's so addicted to sex that they'll let any woman close to them just because she looks good. Like that's easy. It was easy for that little girl to get Shannon Sharp's money. It was easy. She's like, oh, I know what he likes. He'll be he's it's like taking candy from a 2-year-old girl. And what I really think has to be discussed is we have to stop promoting the lack of discipline like that's okay. Like that's just who we are. Or like, oh, he's a victim again. Oh, they did it again. Well, what did you do? What did you do to make yourself a where did what is the word? Where did accountability and personal responsibility? When did that become like the domain of conservatives and white people? Like, at what point did we decide that being accountable for your outcomes and believing you have some say in your life was not something that you should possess as a healthy black person? Your grandparents had that before integration and this whole fairy tale of DEI and all that other crap that they were lying to you about. Before all that, they were fully committed to personal responsibility. But then we got into the whole victimization role. And unfortunately, when you are always the victim, there's no recourse for you. There's nothing for you. All you get is somebody gives you like the victim prize. Like, oh, you poor victim. Here, you're like a disabled child. Here's your wheelchair. Sit in your wheelchair and no one will mess with you. You're a protected class now, but you ain't never gonna win no competition because they don't even take you seriously. In fact, the greatest compliment that you know what Malcolm X, I think, oh no, it wasn't Malcolm X, it was what's his name? James Baldwin had a debate in England with a really conservative guy named William F. Buckley, and they were debating, going back and forth. And Baldwin was doing his thing, Buckley was doing his thing, and Buckley said something that I thought was pretty interesting. He said, you may not think I like you and that I'm attacking you. He said, but the greatest compliment I can give you is that I attack you as an equal. I don't see you as inferior. So I'm not gonna approach you with kid gloves because I respect your intellect. That's why I'm going to attack you in every way that I can, right? And so for those that don't get what he was saying, it's sort of like saying basically that maybe we can operate in the world without constantly leaning on this idea that because we're black, we're disadvantaged and we're broken and we're weak. I don't believe that. And when you start buying into that, then what happens is you exclude yourself from the competition that naturally occurs in life. You exclude yourself from all the possibilities that could be out there if you really just shut up and fought. Just stop bitching and start fighting. Stop expecting, stop saying that, stop announcing that something's not fair as if the world doesn't already know that life isn't fair. Life ain't fair. Life ain't fair. Life ain't fair. They will fight dirty. And one area I can tell you, and I'll move on with this, but I remember I gained a lot of respect for Barack Obama when he was competing with Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton said some stuff that, could be defined as racist. And she said something and black people were in the comments like, there they go, being racist again, these white people, da da da. And I respected Barack. Barack just took the punch and he kept on fighting. He didn't stop back and say, "Oh, they're being racist. I'm gonna quit because this ain't right. They don't want no black." No, Barack kept going because he understood the game. He understood that Hillary was fighting for something that she wanted. They both couldn't be president. So she was fighting for something she felt entitled to. He felt entitled to the same thing. So it was going to be a knockdown, drag out brawl. There was a guy I never forgot. He was a libertarian white guy with a lot of money, and I remember he said to me that the thing he respected about my platform was he said, "You're not into victimization. You talk about solutions." And he said, "So you must be prepared." He said, "Because what people forget is that when you run up the hill with your gun out, that other people are going to pull their guns out too. And you can't run up the hill with your gun out and then act offended when they pull their gun out. You should expect it. You should know that that's going to happen. So just know this. Tell this to your kids. If you go out here and you build a business and you have something going on and you're making money and you're doing well, somebody will come and attack you and they're going to be unfair. They're going to use everything in their power to take from you what you have. And at that point, that's when you dig your heels in and fight to defend what you got. To hell with believing the world is fair. If you don't know that the world ain't fair by now, then I can't help you. All right, let me see. I'm gonna move on. Let's finish up here. Let's go ahead and finish up for tonight. And I hope I didn't sound like I was irritated, but I kind of was. I ain't gonna lie. I don't want to be a victim. I don't think that that's what we're supposed to be. So forgive me. I hope that what I was saying came out the right way. I was not trying to be an asshole, but I probably sounded like one. So maybe maybe that's me. Maybe that's really who I am. I have no idea. But anyway, let's go and get out of here. I'll be in tomorrow morning for Money in the Morning. So make sure if you want to join us for morning class, text the word morning to the number 87948. Text morning to 87948. Also, don't forget Friday night we're doing the financial slumber party. It's going to be a private Zoom. We're going to play music. We're going to play games. We're also going to learn finance. I'm going to teach you all about how to invest in a rocky, volatile economy. Right. So when things get rough, how do you set your portfolio up in a defensive posture to kind of deal with that? So we're going to cover that on Friday night. So if you're on the text list, text the word morning to the number 87948. I'll send you an invitation. All members of the Black Stock Market Program and Prime, you can all come for free. So if you want to join Prime or options training, you can go to drboyceprime.com, drboyceprime.com. All right, guys. So have a good night. God bless you. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate you, and I'll see you soon.